everybody, it's Sophie and Marco, Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. And it's just Marco here to talk about The Walking Dead, Season 10, Episode 4, and I forgot to look up the title, but you know what, it doesn't matter, because, let's be honest, the titles have not been very good. I mean, the titles are never really good for TV shows like this because there's so many episodes that they just have to keep coming up with new ones, and a lot of them aren't very good, and this one wasn't very memorable. It didn't really go with the episode in my opinion, but I mean, I can't even remember it, so I don't. But last episode didn't either. I mean, it was called Ghosts, and it wasn't, I mean, it had a couple of ghost-like moments, but most of the episode was about the Whisperers and hallucinations with them. But I forgot to mention last week, too. That's why I was kind of talking. I knew I forgot something, because last week I loved the episode last week, gave it an A-, but with the end, I forgot to mention how it was revealed that there actually was a Whisperer. So I guess she just hallucinated 2 of them out of the 3, and there was one there for real, and it was a very, very creepy moment, in my opinion, at the end of the episode when you see the Whisperer and the eyes come open. That was very, very creepy to me. And this episode, I would say, is a little bit better than last episode. I think that they're both great episodes. I give this episode, just so you know, I give it an A-, because this episode and last episode have been very strong with the horror elements, with the characters, with giving equal amounts of moments to all these different characters, which is a very hard thing to do with this scope of a show. And could you imagine if they did, like, if they went all the way to season 20, how many characters they would have to be giving moments for, and little scenes here and there. This episode has a great balance of that, but there is a main focus, and it really is all about this girl named Lydia, and I guess she used to be a Whisperer, I guess, and remember, I did not see seasons 8 and 9. I have to preface that with every episode so that people don't think that I'm an idiot. I would remember if I had watched those seasons. But I guess she was a Whisperer, and she's being treated poorly by the community, in particularly a group of 3 teens. And it's a very interesting episode. Again, just like with episode 1, kind of having these new ideas, like with the first episode, you had the little kids telling each other this new legend about Rick sacrificing himself, and how that's going to be passed on from generation to generation. And now we've actually gotten to the point in The Walking Dead, or I mean in this world, where they're starting to have high school style bullies. I mean, that's pretty interesting, in my opinion, the fact that society is kind of coming back, and like the same stuff that you saw before the zombie apocalypse happened is coming back even during the apocalypse. I really liked that in this episode. And I love the actress, actually, who played Lydia. I thought she did a fantastic job. I looked up on IMDb because she looks familiar. She kind of looks like the girl from Logan, but I guess she's not been in much. But she's not the girl from Logan. But she did a great job. And then next to her, you have Negan. And he is the other star. Well, he's not really the star of this episode, but he's a primary focus, and I love how their people are really scared and they're frightened, and now that plot is coming back to what do we do with Negan? What do we do with Negan? Because, like, it's really surprising that he's been in that jail cell for all this time. I mean, what's been going on with him? And so now we finally have an excuse to continue his story. The story that matters. The story that is the strongest and the most emotional out of all of them. And then I need to go back and apologize for the comments I made for in the trailer reaction. Well, I guess not apologize, but just reflect on them. In the trailer, Ezekiel was kissing Michonne, and I said it looks stupid. Like, why are they kissing? Are they in a relationship? Just because they're both the black stars on the show means they have to be in a relationship now. And what I meant was, in a lot of these shows and movies, you always have where the two black characters get together, or the two minority characters get together, and it always feels so cliched, and you add on to the fact that Rick just left the show, and so, she has to be in another relationship now, and so it really wasn't about the characters. Like, I love both of those characters to death. Ezekiel is phenomenal, and he has a moment to shine in this episode as well as her, and that whole kiss is done in a very unexpected and great way, in my opinion. I really liked that whole scene, and I thought that they really did a great job in surprising me and in doing something that was great for the story, because they're not in a relationship now, spoiler alert. I mean, it was a in the heat of the moment kiss. It was just a one-time thing, and Ezekiel in this episode, he's feeling suicidal, and she basically saves him, and I really liked that whole sequence with them. I thought that was very simple, but it was very effective, and I really liked it. And then let's get back to Negan, because again, he's my favorite character. I'm gonna get back to him and then talk about him for 3 minutes, just saying the same old stuff about he's the best part of the show, because he is. He's still the best part of the show. And in this episode, he has like a little Karate Kid style moment, and then he actually is let go, and there's a scene where he's talking to Daryl, and I love his interaction with Daryl because of how he kidnapped Daryl, and he took him hostage in season 7. Well, I mean, took him prisoner and tortured him, and was trying to break him, and that whole episode was just, again, the writers really know how to write villains well, but I've seen in these episodes a trend of actually the heroes being written well as well, which I know that's a funny thing to say, since everyone should be written well, but in the past it's always been, to me at least, where I love the villains more than the heroes in this show. Every single one, almost. I don't like a couple of the villains because they're icky, like those. I mean, I like them in terms of how they are a part of a story, but I don't like them as people. And so with Negan, he basically, spoiler alert, I want to, and another thing, it's an hour long, and it's too bad that it has commercials, because this show really is stronger when you binge watch it, or when you just watch it on Netflix, where you don't have these little interruptions. When I watched the show for the first time, I binged it on Netflix. I watched seasons 1 through 3, and then I bought the first half on Amazon of 4. And so it was a much better experience, and I liked it a lot more than when season 7 came out, and I had to watch it week by week. I had to watch it on Sling. That's how I watch the episodes now, because there's so many commercials, and boy, do the commercials break up the momentum a lot of the episode. In particular, last week, where you have the whole Negan subplot, and it's really intense and suspenseful, and then just go to commercial, and then the commercials last for like 10 minutes straight, basically. It's very irritating. But back to this episode, what it ends up happening is she lets him out, and then she locks herself up. And you know what? I felt that was a very appropriate sort of resolution to the conflict, because they can just, pretend that she's, locked up, quote unquote, and they could, secretly treat her really well and just make it so that the citizens don't know, because the way that the citizens are acting is terrible, and it kind of gives you a little glimpse into what it would be like if the show was about the villains. Like, they've been saying that a lot on the show, like, are we the bad guys? Like, do we ever look at ourselves as the bad guys? Do we ever look at ourselves from another group's perspective? And I think that theme is going to continue. And I think that it's going to be a red herring, though, because, let's face it, they're not the, quote, bad guys. It's just, no one's perfect. But they do have masks, as Lydia puts it in this episode. They all have masks. They're all pretending. But that's a good thing. They're trying to restart society. They're trying to make it a good environment for these kids to grow up in. And so it would be bad if they were raising them like they did with the Whisperers. And we've seen that with these Whisperer characters like Lydia, and then that guy, the one of the doctors. I mean, they have PTSD. They're suffering because of their time spent there in the Whisperer group. And so we can see the negative effect it had to be in that kind of a group. In my opinion, this group is much better. And then the Kingdom, we haven't really spent that much time with them. They're kind of the comedic group. Oh, wait a second. Oh my god. I've not talked about the sex scene yet. Okay, I give this episode an A-, but even though this episode is better than last week because of how consistent it is, it's not. I mean, last week, the reason why it was an A- was because it had all these oh yeah moments. It had all those Negan moments, and it had all those Carol moments. This episode was more of a fluent story, a great story that just flowed naturally and was written very well. But it didn't really have any oh yeah moments. I mean, the moment with Negan getting let out, I mean, that should have been a oh yeah, yes, finally moment. But instead it was just, oh, he's out, whatever. We'll deal with it next episode. Oh, commercial. 10 minutes of commercials. And so, in my opinion, there's 3 valid reasons to have a sex scene. And now, a sex scene in a movie or a TV show, it's a very tricky thing to pull off. I'm a writer myself. Personally, it kind of makes me uncomfortable to write them, because, I mean, it feels like after a certain point you're just crossing over into erotic fan fiction, and you're not writing an actual thing that can be made. And it doesn't make sense. Does it fit in the story? Why is it there? Does it matter if we even have a sex scene or if it's just making out? But with this episode, they have a weird lesbian sex scene at the beginning, kind of, but not really. They don't show anything because they can't show anything. They can show all this violence, but then they can't show any lesbian sex. And they have the kissing, and it's dimly lit, and they're not really just very weird. Very, very, very weird choices. And it has nothing to do with the actresses. They're both good actresses. I haven't seen enough of them yet to say if they're great or not, but they're not bad. So, there's 3 reasons to have a sex scene. Number 1, and now this might irritate some people because they're ignorant. They don't want to face the truth. They want to live in a little fantasy world. Studios do this. They've done it for a million years. The number 1 reason to have a sex scene in movies and TV is to get them nude. And if that's hard to fathom, just turn this video off right now. Because we live in a day and age where we have all this feminism and SJW shit that invades and corrupts and infects our TV and movies. But what's funny is that they still let all this sex scenes, all this nudity, because they think it's empowering, they let that stuff fly, but they make all these other changes. And the reason is because they want these actors to get nude, to please fans. I mean, I see this stuff all over the internet. They'll post like, "Oh my god, did you see the new sex scene with this actress and this actress? Oh yeah, they took their tops off and everything, and you could see stuff, and you know, that is the number 1 reason. And I'm sorry how crude I had to get, but it's the truth. There's no hiding from it. I mean, there's been some great sex scenes as well that make use of what they okay. And then the second reason is because they want to have an emotional bond between the characters before something big happens. And now, before I get to that, if you want any examples of just seeing actresses nude for the sake of seeing them nude, go watch Atomic Blonde. Moving on now. And so, with the second reason, an example of this one is Scream. Remember Scream, where Sydney, the whole movie, she won't sleep with him, and then right before the climax of the movie, spoiler alert, they sleep together, and it's her first time, and it's this big emotional moment, and then it gets even more emotional, because then right after this happens, she finds out he's the killer, and that he's been doing this the whole time, and he's sick, and he had a relationship with her mother, and and it's just crushing. And that sex scene elevates it to the nth degree. Has nothing to do with seeing them naked. I mean, she's one of those actors who doesn't even do that, but it works for the story purposes. And then number 3 is kind of goes along with the first one, to see 2 characters get together finally. An example of this is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Spoiler alert again if you haven't seen Buffy, when she gets together with Spike. Now, these are 2 characters, they're very opposite, but the whole series, there's this like, oh, what if they got together? What if they hooked up one time? And finally, in season 5, boom, they have this huge sex scene, and they get together, and it's like, yeah, finally they got together. And so that's what they do. It's like a big relief moment. It's like, yay, finally these people, they're in love. They're not gonna hide it anymore. They're gonna be together, and they're gonna love each other and everything. And so those are the top 3 reasons you have a sex scene. And and those are the 3 valid reasons. There are a lot of other reasons that people would say, but none of them are valid. These 3 are the main ones. And the scene at the beginning was trash. It had no reason to be there. It wasn't a good sex scene. It wasn't a good scene. It didn't make much sense in the story. There was some weird stuff at the end where I thought they were kind of hinting at maybe one of them being bisexual. Like, it's just so confusing. Just don't have a sex scene unless it's needed. Unless you're going to do one of those 3 things. The first one you can't really do on television because You can't show that, but you can show someone's head getting blown off. Yay, 2019. So, yeah, I really enjoyed this episode, and this is 20 minutes long. I'm sorry about the length, but I wanted to do this episode justice and give this episode the props that it deserved, because it was a great episode. It was just a very nice story, and it continues the story in a way where there's no filler, and there's no why are we doing this, and like, can we just move on and get to the story, get to the action. This felt very necessary, except for that stuff at the beginning. So thank you very much for watching. But if you enjoyed this episode, check out all my other Walking Dead reviews. I have episodes 1, 2, 3, and then I also have the trailer review, where you can look back and watch that trailer review and just see like how different my reaction was to that trailer than it actually is to the real series. And you can also see like some of the trailer trickery, like the Avengers stuff. There is some very blatant Avengers stuff in the trailer, but in the show it does not feel like that at all. It feels very natural, and like it's not a ripoff. So yeah, goodbye everybody.